Hey, everybody, welcome to another Accessibility Talks. We're glad you could join us for our monthly virtual meetup on accessibility, inclusion, and usability. It's a space where we learn from guest speakers and connect as a community. I'm your host, Andrew Olson, and I'm a software engineer at Principal Financial Group. For a visual description, I'm a white man with long, Viking-esque red hair and a red beard. I'm wearing a blue t-shirt and dark rimmed glasses, and my pronouns are he, him. Before we get started, a quick reminder that Alley Talks is dedicated to maintaining a safe and welcoming environment. We ask everyone joining us today, speakers and attendees alike, to follow our code of conduct in the chat and during discussions. You can find the full version on our website. Our goal is to ensure a respectful space for open dialogue and learning. We also want to take a moment to thank the partners who make Alley Talks possible. A special thank you to our bronze supporter, Principal Financial Group, my employer. We also want to recognize our Alley Cat Club monthly members. I am also a monthly member of our Alley Cat Club. Every contribution helps us keep this community growing and our content free and our talks accessible to everyone. If you'd like to support Alley Talks as a sponsor, please visit our website to learn more. Your contributions go directly toward compensating speakers and improving our events. You can also double your impact through corporate matching programs like Benevity. Just search for us under Alley Talks by Midwest Open Source Alliance. Do you have questions for our speaker? Here's how to ask. If you're watching the live premiere on YouTube, you can ask your question in the live chat. If you're not watching live, you can leave a comment on the YouTube video or continue the conversation on LinkedIn or other social media channels afterward. Today, we have Angela Fowler, Chief Accessibility Officer at LeapGround. She is presenting on the myth of the difficult user. Angela, I have a few fun facts about you. So I'm going to pick two of these. There's some really great ones here. So the first one is, for several years, you've made and sold homemade beef jerky to help make ends meet. And then the second one is, when you were a kid, you recorded lessons on how to successfully prank your siblings. You say that it turns out that you were practicing your speaking skills and didn't know it. So I'll leave it to you. Do you want to talk about beef jerky, or do you want to talk about some pranks that you did for your siblings?
I forgot I put that second one on there. It's funny how the things you do in childhood turn out to be practice for adulthood. But, the beef jerky is actually a good story because I was really, really having a hard time making ends meet in 2012. I lived with my dad at the time. My son was 5 or 6. He was out of work. I was going through school, and it was just miserable financially. It was one of those things that you lose sleep over. And I was talking to a friend and commiserating and complaining like we do. And he said, Angela, because he tried my beef jerky. He said, Angela, I will spot you the money to buy enough beef jerky to sell at National Convention. Sell that jerky at National Convention. Because, I was going to National Convention. I paid for it, NFB National Convention. I paid for it, months before. So I was going, no matter what. So I said, yeah, okay, I'll take you up on it. So I got the money, sold enough to pay him back, pay my expenses, the walking around money for convention, and have some left over. And then, people that bought from me at convention started reaching out to me and saying, hey, you got any more of that jerky? So it started really organically. And from that point until, prices really shot through the roof in 2023, anytime I needed to, get over the hump financially, I'd say, I'd make up some jerky and say, post it online. I got jerky to sell. And, more often than not, it would save me. So the lesson in that is yeah, the lesson in that is, we all have marketable skills, even if we don't know they're marketable. So don't ever give up on yourself.
I think another thing is what people see in you. People saw you as this amazing creative jerky. You see yourself in other ways, right? And so, why
Yeah.
not use your skills for jerky? That's amazing. So that's great that they recognize that in you, and you were able to share that out.
There's a saying: a jack of all trades and a master of none is far better than being a master of one. And, yeah, I'm an accessibility strategist. I do all this stuff with accessibility. Um, I also build websites for people. Whatever, whatever it takes. If I have a skill that people can use and are willing to, pay me money to, have it be a part of their, what they're doing, um, whether it's making their products accessible or, eating beef jerky, you know, that's just, that's how we get by in the world.
That's great. Well, with that, I'm going to pass it over to you. The floor is yours. On the screen right now, I have the opening of your talk. So if you're ready, let's go ahead and take it away.
I'm ready. Let's do it. So yeah, like Andrew said, this is about the myth of the difficult user. So think of a government form, right? You're filling out a government form. It's the bane of all our existence. Instructions that don't make sense, form fields that you're really not sure what goes in them. Sometimes you don't know whether the section you're looking at is the section you're supposed to fill out or somebody else is supposed to fill out. So tell me, are you the problem or is the form the problem? I would submit to you that the form is the problem. One time I was filling out a form for my son's school, right? This was this was over a decade ago, but it sticks out in my mind because first of all, it was a PDF, and we all know how those are. But there were two fields on the PDF, both labeled name. Now, one of those was for my name, and one of those was for my son's name, but I didn't have a clue which one was which. To my screen reader, the layout was so confused I couldn't even hazard a guess. Now, for a sighted person, maybe you can guess based on the layout. Maybe not. But to a user of assistive technology, all you hear is to form edit, name edit, name edit, name edit. Okay, which name? So, people with disabilities see the systems break first. That form was inaccessible to me, but I would hazard a guess that it caused problems for other people as well. So here's the myth: users are often labeled as difficult, and I'm doing the little air quotes, or at least trying. Users are labeled as difficult when they struggle to use a product or a service. It usually means they don't follow instructions, they get things wrong, they make mistakes. But saying a user is difficult is usually just another way of saying the system is broken and we don't know where. So who gets labeled difficult? Most people label themselves. They assume they're the problem. They assume, oh, I'm just not tech savvy. So they don't say anything. They just move on. But people with disabilities already know that the world wasn't built with us in mind. So we are far less likely to blame ourselves. We push back. We talk to customer service. We say, hey, this form is not accessible. But for us, clear labeling isn't optional. Consistent layout that makes sense isn't optional. So we're not being difficult. We're just pointing out problems that are probably problems for everybody. So what's really happening here? People with disabilities are, well, I like to use the analogy of canaries in the coal mine. We detect problems and speak out about problems before anybody else does, but these problems are affecting everybody. User error usually means the system is difficult to use. The need for more training usually means that the training that exists doesn't make sense. At this point, I want to say a word about compliance, because compliance is oftentimes mistaken for accessible, and compliance or perceived compliance does not equal accessibility. Let's take that form. Some would argue, they would actually be incorrect, but some would argue that that form, having those two forms labeled, is compliant. They both have an accessible label, after all. It's not. The labels need to be unique and they need to be useful, but that aspect of the form would pass a basic accessibility check. So just because something is compliant or declared compliant does not mean it's accessible. It's accessible when real users can use it easily and intuitively. So where do systems break? Well, systems break when they're designed for the ideal user under the ideal conditions. They're built according to technical specifications and not built by people who put themselves in the chair of the user and say, if I can't see, am I going to be able to use this? So the form exists. It might even pass a basic accessibility check, but it doesn't work. Accessibility. So when we talk about accessibility, we're talking about designing things that stand the test of real world conditions. It's not a checklist. It's not a compliance metric to be achieved, although it's often treated as such. But accessibility is building things that work for as many users as possible, as often as possible. So let's talk a little bit about user research, because if you don't include people with disabilities, then you're not going to catch problems before the product ships. If you include people with disabilities too late in the process, then you're going to catch problems, but then you have to remediate rather than build accessibly. So do research with all users. Yes, research with ideal users. But research with people with disabilities, with older users, with people that might not necessarily be good with technology. Because then you'll be able to build accessible products from the beginning, and you won't need to spend time and money on massive remediation projects. So what do? Stop asking what's wrong with the user. Start asking, how can the system be improved? Include diverse users in your user testing early and often. Build things by putting yourself in the chair of the user and asking yourself, if conditions aren't ideal, will I still be able to use this? Takeaways. Your difficult users are actually your best friend because they tell you where the system is broken. If people have to work around the system isn't working. So listen to those canaries in the coal mine and take heed. In closing, let's go back to that form that I was talking about earlier. That form wasn't broken because I'm blind. That form was broken because it wasn't built with assistive technology in mind. If people with disabilities and older users and people who aren't necessarily tech savvy had been included in the process from the beginning, had it been built with the user in mind, all users in mind, it wouldn't have shipped the way it did.
Angela, thank you so much for coming today and talking through this very interesting interaction you had, and I really appreciate your perspective. I have a few questions for you. So the first question is, when did you first start thinking of yourself as a diagnostic tool rather than a difficult user? I'm doing air quotes as well.
Just recently, actually. My journey from accessibility advocate to accessibility strategist has taken place over the last 5 years or so. And it started really when I started talking to designers and developers. When I worked on the Department of Veterans Affairs website for one of their contractors. And I started talking to these folks, and I realized that, most people actually want to do the right thing when it comes to accessibility. They just don't know what to do. And, most businesses, when you talk to businesses, they don't even know what accessibility is. So when you start blaming them for being inaccessible, you're really just causing dissension. But if you give them the tools, if you give them a way to spot inaccessibility easily, how do you know something is inaccessible if you maybe aren't a digital native yourself? Maybe if your definition of accessibility is whether or not the ball game is broadcast in your area or not. Well, you look at your users, right? Who is having trouble with your software? What are people saying? Are people registering for your service and then never using it? Are they canceling their subscription after 1 month? And if so, why? It may not be the service itself. It may be their ability to actually access the service. So that's where the canaries in the coal mine theory came out of. That's where this whole concept of, we're not difficult. We're just giving you information that you need to know.
That's great. I have another question for you. I'm going to bump up the font a little bit here. So, beyond the name field example that you gave earlier, what's another everyday failure that visual users would never notice?
So, links and buttons that aren't keyboard accessible. Sighted people navigate using a mouse and using their eyes. Most sighted people do. Not all sighted people, but most of them do. There are sighted keyboard users out there, believe it or not. But assistive technology users navigate either using the keyboard or using some other device that acts like the keyboard acts. Like, for example, um, things like Dragon Naturally Speaking, where you actually talk to your computer and it does what you tell it to do, literally. That software interacts with the interface in the same way that a keyboard does. Now, if you click on something with your mouse and it works for you. So you might not, because we all look at life through the lens of our own experiences. We all do. I need to be reminded to provide slides for my talks every time I give one. I mean, I can't see the slides. But a basic test that you can run on your website is, or your application or your form or whatever it is to put focus at the top of it. Put your mouse away. Don't worry, you can have it back when we're done. And tab through everything. Hit enter on the buttons. Make sure that you can use it using just your keyboard. If you can, great, you passed an accessibility hurdle. If you can't, well, that's important information to have.
That's great. For those of you that don't know, before the talk, and why would you, is very fascinating interaction between yourself and the Alley Talks crew here. Is we had your slides, but you had changed the outline. And so what people are seeing right now on the screen and what is going to be edited out is every time I would add the text of your notes on the slide for visual learners, we put that up on the screen, and I would say what text is on the screen, and then we'd say action, and we'd edit that out. So what's amazing is the interactions that you and I had, and what we're having right now is you're seeing a text edit of the questions, but those are for the sighted users, and for the visual folks that need that extra feedback. So we've figured out how to communicate even in this presentation about accessibility, and it's been a really great interaction back and forth. So
Well,
really
and
appreciate you, Angela.
what makes it even more interesting is that my teenage son borrowed my camera. And I don't think about a camera. I'm totally blind. I don't think about a camera until I need one. So, he could have borrowed it 2 weeks ago. And he forgot, and I didn't care until 5 minutes before it was time to. So we had to, I had to download the Riverside app and log in on my iPhone and prop the camera up. And I mean, we're talking very, we put this thing together with baling wire and duct tape. So,
But what's
we've got.
what I want to
This
say to you,
is,
Angela, is it was just a level of communication between myself
yep,
and Aubrey using a line of communication. It was a line
yep,
of email, and then you sending the text over, and then it was another line of
yep.
what is happening on the screen to notify you. So there's been so many interactions and communications that didn't rely on a mouse or traditional ways, but we're able to make this work. And I think that's what's really special about Alley Talks and what we're even here talking about today. So really
The
appreciate you and pulling this off. So any other thoughts on that? I'm going to ask you one more question after that.
Yeah, the cornerstone of accessibility is communication, right? I mean, what can we do to make this thing work?
What was the easy
And
thing is to just shut it down and not have this talk. But
I
that's not
thought, I thought we were
helping.
gonna have to reschedule this. I honestly, when I'm like, this is not gonna work. But by golly, we got together, we patched together a system, and we made it work.
And we're going to edit this, and we're going to make sure the right text is on the screen of what is representative of your talk.
We
And
are.
with that being said, let's get to the final question and then go on our merry way. So on the screen, I'm putting a final question to you, Angela, is what's a recent moment when you caught yourself assuming that you were the problem? You can't use what we just talked about. So what's another
Hmm.
time when you caught yourself assuming you were the problem?
Hmm. I've been given access to a project in our project management software. And so I clicked into this project, and there was literally there was the page title, and then there was nothing. And I did everything I could think of, and part of my mind was like, this is not accessible. This is an accessibility issue. Blah blah blah. Part of my mind was like, come on, Angela, this is an HTML based product. You should at least be able to access some of it. What is going on? Well, it turns out that there was literally nothing on the screen. Occam's razor, right? The simplest solution is the right solution. The reason that I wasn't seeing anything on the screen is because there was nothing on the screen. So what I thought was, A, Angela doesn't know how to use a computer, or B, this entire thing is inaccessible to screen readers, was actually, well, what you see is actually what you got.
That is hilarious. That is the simplest thing. So that's a really great example. Oh my gosh. Well, with that, really appreciate you making it work today. Downloading an app and doing it right before the talk is nothing that we ever want to have to put our speakers through. So we
Oh,
really
well.
appreciate you and everything that you've done and having this wonderful talk today. So thank
you
you.
know being a blind person for 44 years, you sort of get used to just figuring stuff out and flying by the seat of your pants and just doing whatever the heck you need to do to get the job done. So it's just another day at the office.
Oh my gosh. Well, we really appreciate you and thanks for I know I learned something, our tech host learned something today, and I think it's just a testament that we were able to pull this off, and I can't wait to edit it and share this with everybody. So thank you, Angela. Appreciate you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so much, Angela. Let's continue the conversation on our LinkedIn event. You can find us at linkedin.com/A11yTalks. We're always looking for new voices, especially from marginalized groups in tech. Visit our speakers page to learn more, then reach out on LinkedIn or email us at team@alleytalks.com to start the conversation. Subscribe to our YouTube channel so you never miss a talk, and follow us on LinkedIn, Blue Sky, and Mastodon to stay in the loop. You can find all these links and more on our website. Thank you for joining us today. We appreciate you being here. We'll see you next time.